The campaign in Oregon to move part of the state into Idaho has been gaining momentum, so much so that Lee Cowan went back to bring us this update.
This is 1863.
Mike McCarter. He knows his American history.
Well, guys, let's go ahead and get started here.
Almost as well as he knows his Bible.
Dear Father, we just thank you for this time.
His family has lived and worshiped here in Oregon for 4 generations.
The only time I lived out of the state was during the Vietnam War when I was in the military.
But his Oregon might not be the Oregon you're thinking of. The one with the misty, rugged coastline, Pinot Noir wineries, and its loyally blue politics. Nope, this is the red side of Oregon, the rural and more sparsely populated part. Mike lives in the town of La Pine.
It's almost like the Grand Canyon goes right along the Cascade Range.
It's that big a divide.
It is a big divide.
What that means politically, he says, is the blue part of Western Oregon always outweighs the eastern part's red.
And in talking to a legislator over in the Portland area, I said, the legislature doesn't listen to our people, our representatives over here. He said, whoa, stop, Mike. We hear what they're saying. We just outvote you.
So McCarter decided to look for greener pastures, or in this case, at least one's a little more red.
This would be Oregon, and that across the river would be Idaho.
We met him along the banks of the Klamath River last August, while he was spearheading a campaign called Move Oregon's Border. The group had been busy introducing ballot measures all across the state, asking voters about the idea of pushing the urban blue bits of Oregon into a smaller but still populous state, and then taking the rural red parts and creating what would be part of a more expansive Idaho.
When you have a government that won't listen to the opposition or take into account those of us that live out here, then we have no government representation.
Eastern Oregonians like Sandy Gilson quickly jumped on board.
This town is about 200.
She owns a real estate business in rural John Day, Oregon, a community more closely aligned to Boise, Idaho, than it is to Portland, Oregon, in virtually every way.
Are you optimistic that you've got a chance?
I look at it that the American Revolution was a big hurdle to make, and they did it.
Does it feel like things are a little closer than they were?
It absolutely does.
It's been a year since we visited, so we decided to go back to Oregon to see just where things stood now.
We asked these counties, how do you feel about it?
And you didn't know at the time.
No.
And now you do.
Yes.
Back then, 9 counties had voted in favor of considering making Eastern Oregon part of Idaho. Well, now that number is up to 12, with another county set to vote this coming May.
We're getting into people's heads about this.
The pendulum is starting to swing.
It is.
As for Idaho itself, well, it's at least open to discussions. This past spring, Idaho's state representatives approved a measure to begin a dialogue with Oregon over whether and how to redraw their common boundary. But so far, Mike says, Oregon is playing hard to get, at least in public.
And we've heard back from behind the scenes that, wait a minute, if we fund a bridge in Eastern Oregon, why would we do that if it's going to become Idaho?
But the opposition has swung into gear too.
Moving Oregon's border, we just can't afford it.
A Portland nonprofit called Western State Center is branding the move a radical change, comparing it to Oregon's past white nationalist hate groups.
Why are violent extremists pushing for secession?
Their message? If rural conservatives don't like Oregon's urban liberal leanings, well, don't move the border, move themselves instead.
We're not running away from the problem. We're not going to run away and move to Idaho. We're going to deal with the problem right here and now.
There are a lot of details still to be ironed out, and the devil is in every one of them. Not to mention the fact that actually changing the border would require both Oregon and Idaho to agree, and then it would need to be approved by the U.S. Congress.
No, I don't think that we should act like state lines are written in stone. We should look at them and say, does this actually make sense?
Author Richard Kreitner who wrote a book about secession and division, says it's hardly a new idea.
Secession has always been there. You know, Catholics lived in Maryland, debtors lived in Georgia, Puritans lived in New England. They were kind of separate to begin with, and that's why they wanted nothing to do with one another.
So it's really woven into our DNA.
Absolutely. There's nothing sacred about Oregon. There's nothing sacred about Delaware or my native New Jersey, in my opinion. You know, these are just kind of inherited forms.
Did you ever imagine, though, you'd be involved in a movement like this, though?
No.
Mike McCarter will be the first to tell you that moving Oregon's border is radical. But he says if we've learned anything about our politics in the last several years, it's that conventional seems so yesterday.
I mean, as fast as things are changing in this country right now, why can't we? Why can't people still have the right to vote for who governs them?